Hello chess friends and welcome to Azarov Chess channel and welcome back to the FIDE World Chess Championship match between the two top grandmasters Ding Liren and Gukesh Tomaraju. We're now in the round 8 of this amazing chess event, and yesterday in the round 7 I think we had really an awesome, spectacular game in which Gukesh missed a huge opportunity to take the lead. I think Gukesh had a completely winning position. Ding Liren squeezed the draw out of a losing position, and today I would say it was a similar game with huge opportunities for both sides. It was, I think, real roller coaster. It went up and down all over the board, so huge chances both players had today. Let's see now what happened in the round 8 of the FIDE World Chess Championship match in 2024. So with white, Ding opened with the move c4. We have e5, so far the King's English variation of the English opening, knight to c3, and now we have the Kramnik-Shirov counter-attack with the move bishop to b4. The idea is clear. We want to pick up the knight and mess up a little bit the pawn structure here, create of course unbalanced pawn structure, double pawn structure on the c file. We have now knight to d5. Ding is not allowing that, hits now simply the bishop drops back, and now knight to f3, d6 here by Gukesh, and now after move g3, c6, kicking with the knight, which forces now reaction by Ding, and Ding gives up now the knight for a bishop. And of course the huge advantage that white is now in the game is that the bishop pair, and the bishop pair is perfectly fine here because the bishops will eventually find their way into the game. It's not a block position in which the bishops cannot breathe. I think so far a good opening theory here for white, good continuation here for Ding Liren. We have now a bishop to g2. We have f6, interesting sideline, which may seem me a little bit maybe rushed to push the pawn on f6 because you create a little bit here weaknesses all over the place, but you have still somehow a great competition with the move bishop to e6. And what black is actually trying to do, that's also the preparation of the c6 move, is that you're trying somehow to break and enter with the move d5. You're trying then simply to get the central control, so white could lose maybe a little bit the battle in the center when it comes to pawns. So we have now after f6 castling by Ding, we have bishop to e6 and now b3, which becomes now a theoretical novelty in move 9 in chess history. Queen to c2 has been played in a game played by, let me see, Natwali Sinswat against Denis Nikolaev back in 2023. So b3, nothing spectacular, I would say. Also good move, which makes of course this square here cleared for the bishop. So now Ding is trying to play in sort of a double fianchetto way. We have now the move d5, and I would say a pretty equalish position. As we mentioned, white has the bishop pair as an advantage, and black has now the powerful central control with the pawns as an advantage in this position. After move d5, Ding goes now into a very interesting line. Bishop to a3, very powerful move by the bishop. We have now castling, and now after rook to c1, now comes, I think, the first maybe tiny little critical moment. Maybe here Gukesh had a big chance after rook to c1 to even take over, maybe with this idea to play rook to e8. Rook to e8 is very important because you are controlling further the knight on e7, and now the queen can play freely in a potential line maybe like e3. Queen to a5 would be a great move, I would say, here for black, which makes again a reaction here by white. White has to here pick up now the knight, and after rook to e7, I would say here maybe more playable position for black because of better activity. The queen is now very active. This pawn is hanging, has to be protected, and you're still continuing the game with this beautiful mobile pawn structure. In a couple of more moves, I think we could be even further aggressive with, I don't know, c5, d4, e4, and similar stuff. The knight has still a good score to develop. Bishop is very active, so I would say this is a position that I would love to play more from black's perspective. But after rook to c1, Gukesh played now a5, which is not a mistake or something, but I simply liked maybe more this rook to e8 approach. We have now knight to e1, rook to e8, getting out of this mess. Now comes this move, but now the a5 pawn has taken the square that we have talked about, the beautiful a5 square for the queen. We have now f4, e takes f4, and now rook to f4. Ding goes very aggressively now into the middle game stage, which is, I think, something that he has to do. If you have the bishop pair, you have to somehow let the position explode. You have to create unbalanced pawn structure. You have to create open diagonals, open files, and when the bishops are on the board, of course, you want to create madness all over the board. So here after rook to f4, d takes c4, we have now b takes c4, and although Gukesh took now many pawns in the center, still there are some squares that black can use, that black can attack. So white has left now many weaknesses, I would say, in the position, but this is a sharp line. Ding tried out. He's trying, of course, to get use of his bishop pair in the game. We have now knight to g6, an attack against the rook, rook to e4, and now knight to a6, knight to c2, preparing also d4, or maybe to hop with the knight on d4 and then attack the bishop further. Also, I would say d4 in a potential line makes sense, but first of all you have to clear the situation about your c4 pawn. So first of all, after knight to c2 and queen to c7, Ding went for this line, knight to d4, hitting the bishop, and then maybe later, if the position allows it, then he could try maybe the move d4. We have bishop to f7, we have d3, knight to e5, and now knight to f3, knight to d7, we have rook takes e8, rook takes e8, and now comes another, I would say, critical moment of the game. Here, Ding Liren doesn't react correctly. The position is again about equal. White has still the bishop pair, but this bishop had a great activity, but now it's, I think, not so useful on this diagonal. It's aiming into air. It's basically not attacking so much. So that's why I would say an equal position, although it's an open battle, still with opportunities for both sides. But what Ding had to do, I would say here, is to first of all play the move bishop to b2. You have to now get use of another diagonal for the Darsko bishop. Okay, the Darsko bishop had its function on this diagonal. Now it's time to take over here, because now we could attack maybe this structure here. Maybe if the knight gets somehow, I don't know, maybe here to f5, if the queen gets here maybe to g4. That's just a plan, of course. Black is also doing meanwhile something, but maybe changing the direction of the attack of the Darsko bishop would be a much better solution now here for white. And then if after potential, I don't know, knight to e5, that black could play. What white should not play in this imaginary line is to play knight to e5. Then queen to b6 is going to happen. Then we can pick up this one. Even if you pick up the bishop on f7, then even rook takes e2 can happen. And I think this line leads into a perpetual repetition of moves. Here we have here, of course, a thematic draw. So in order to prevent that, after knight to e5, maybe white should go then here with bishop to c3, but the main goal is to stay on this diagonal with the Darsko bishop. That's the most important thing here to say. Then after something like knight to g4, we can play queen to d2, knight to e3 doesn't make really sense, because we'll simply attack further the piece, so it's simply not working. So here, as we mentioned, bishop to b2 would be the optimal choice here for Ding Liren, but unfortunately for him, he played now tiny little inaccuracy with rook to b1, and this move is allowing here Gukesh to take over in the game. Here black should be better because of this line, b5. Great move by Gukesh, because he found after c takes b5 this intermediate check with the queen on b6. Now you have to step back, and now after c takes b5, the pawns are rolling on the queen side, and finally black has created some kind of a strategic, really deep strategic advantage with this potential 2 versus 1 pawn majority on the queen side. Now at least something is rolling here. The bishop is in danger, and believe it or not, again, Ding doesn't react correctly even this line. Now he finally plays the move bishop to b2, but this move is not so good because this pawn is hanging now. For a better line was to play maybe queen to d2. Then if something like b4 happens, then after bishop to b2, it's very hard to calculate this tactical sequence. Then after something like bishop to a2, you can still play a counterattack against this queen, but then after queen to e6, you attack now the bishop. If, for instance, b3 happens, then you can pick up this pawn. If, for instance, bishop to d5 happens, then we'll pick it up with the rook. So this was the only way here for Ding to somehow stay in the game, to play really queen to d2, not allow somehow this pawn to be taken in sort of a tactical way. So the solution of Ding Liren's problems is really a tactical one. He missed now this opportunity to stay somehow in the game. But after bishop to b2, the position is much better here. The computer evaluation is 1.5 in black's favor. So if nothing dramatically changes, then black should be really winning here, even I would say, because of this pawn majority, because now a huge activity. Now we have bishop to a2. Look at this. Gukesh grabbed the pawn. We have now these two pawns, two connected pass pawns that are rolling on the queen side. So strategically, white should be really lost in this position. But now after bishop to d4, now comes another critical moment. Here we have bishop to d4, an attack against the queen, and the issue is now that you cannot really go somewhere with the queen. The issue is if you try something like queen to c7, then this pawn is hanging. If you go here to b8, then again this rook to a1 concept, and then we pick up here the pawn. Even if you try queen to c6 to step back with the queen, the issue is then you're getting in front of the light square bishop, so nothing is working. Even if you go to queen to, with your queen to e6, then the b5 pawn is hanging. So in order to stay better here, black has to play now a move that covers the queen with the knight. But now the huge question is, should we play a knight from a to c5 or knight from d to c5? What do you think is now the correct solution here of this problem? Which knight should cover now the queen, the d knight or d8? Maybe just for fun, practice some tactics and search now for the best idea here for black. Okay, here Gukesh, believe me or not, didn't react correctly. He played now rook from a to c5, and the issue about this move is that actually now suddenly files and diagonals are getting open against the queen. A better choice, let's see first, the better choice is to play knight from d to c5, and now after something like rook to c1, putting more pressure of course against this knight, black could play a simple bishop to d5, competing for the square, and then in the potential line, I don't know, knight to h4, you can even go with your rook here. If bishop to d5 happens, rook to d5, queen to c2 can be maybe played, but suddenly, look at this, the pawns are rolling. You have to also, of course, first of all, step back with the bishop, so nothing really is working here. So even if you try, I don't know, something else, I don't know, immediately after rook to c1, I don't know, bishop to d5, as we mentioned, there's nothing, really nothing that can be done. Even queen to c2 immediately, as I said, just simply prolonging the game. We play rook to c8 and still covering the c5 knight. Nothing spectacular can really happen, I would say here. I would dare even to say completely winning position here for Gukesh. But what he played was actually rook, knight from a to c5, which was not a good choice because of rook to c1. And now if you try maybe rook to c8, then queen to d2 again, puts more pressure against this knight. The issue is now after something like bishop to f7, we can go bishop to h3, and you see the issue is that this knight is suddenly getting pinned by the light square bishop, so the bishops will be really crossing all over the place. And after rook to c1, what Gukesh should have played is actually again a tactical idea. He should have played b4, simply pushing this pawn further, and then in a potential line like queen to c2, you play b3. That's very important here to play, because then after queen to b2, you have this one, you have this resource, knight to a4, queen to a3, and then queen to b4 would then solve the tactical problems, because after queen to b4, a takes b4. The issue about this Gukesh line that he played with the knight from a to c5 is that now you don't have any more connected pass pawns, but still it's a better position for black, because this is still unpleasant to handle. This rook will eventually come on the c5 when we play maybe b2, so it's really devastating now position also here for Ding. What after rook to c1, Gukesh makes now the second consecutive mistake in the game. Here after rook to c1, he plays bishop to b3, which is not good. As we mentioned, b4 was much better. This move, bishop to b3, actually improves now the position of the queen. Now Ding goes with queen to e1, and actually this move is helping out just here Ding in order to get this battery much more powerful against the knight on c5. And now Gukesh makes another mistake. He plays now bishop to e6, really a couple of unnecessary moves, and suddenly white has a winning position. So here after bishop to e6, Ding continues of course with queen to f2. Why not simply putting more pressure against the knight on c5? A better choice here for Gukesh was to play now the move a4, simply trying to push the pawn further, and then after something like queen to b4, you're trying to play something like this, queen to e6. You have to now give up the piece, but now I think you can stay in the game after queen to e2, king to g1, then knight to c5, and now you can grab another pawn. And I would say this is a very complicated now position to play for both sides. White has of course the extra minor piece, but of course black gained now many pawns in this tactical sequence. This was the only way, as we mentioned, a4 to stay in the game. But after queen to e1, bishop to e6 by Gukesh, and now Ding continues just with an easy move, with an easy pressure here against the knight on c5. The Gukesh has to now protect it, and now bishop to e3, rook to c7, knight to d4, and here after bishop to f7. Look how bad this bishop to e6 move by Gukesh was. Now he loses another tempo with his piece. Now Ding plays a powerful knight to c6, which disconnects now the rook from the defense of the knight. Here Gukesh has to react. Rook takes c6, bishop to c6, and now queen to c6, bishop to c5. And in this tactical sequence, actually Ding won the exchange. But okay, nothing is really over. White is much better, but still these two connected pass pawns are something that bars now here Ding in the continuation of the game. We have now the move h6, king to e1, b4, simply pushing the pawn further, queen to d4, knight to e5, and now king to d2. Ding centralizes the king, which is not such a bad idea. He still has the dark square bishop on the board. Really, you cannot really be attacked on dark squares now by the queen, so nothing dramatic is going on with this king, but maybe it was a tiny little risky choice to go forward with the king, just maybe trying to trade off the queens and maybe go for a trade of knight, bishop for a knight, maybe activate somehow the rook here on the 8th rank would be also a powerful idea. So many chances. Maybe he really didn't have to play so active with the king. So queen to g2, we have queen to f2, queen to d5, and now Ding starts also to make a couple inaccuracies. Look at this. Ding was already low on clock. He had 7 minutes on the clock, and Gukesh had only around 4 minutes on the clock, which was really a game of time pressure. Now after queen to d5 here, Ding plays now queen to d4, and queen to d4 makes sense because you are you're challenging now black's queen, and black should not trade off queens, because if you do that, then it's a completely winning position in this sequence. Actually White will control here both of the pawns, will simply get with the rook behind, and in one moment the position is simply collapsing in here for black. So after queen to d4, of course Gukesh didn't trade off the queens. He tried queen to g2, which was maybe not the optimal choice. He should have played here on this side of the board, and then after rook to c2, bishop to e6, and queen to e6, pardon me. Then still you can push the pawn b3 and similar stuff. You can just start to let this pawn roll here on the queen side, but in any of these lines black should be slightly worse in the position. But here he played queen to g2, which still is somehow playable. We have queen to f2, and now again the same pattern, queen to d5, and now queen to d4. Again Ding hopes now to trade off the queens, but now after queen to a2, actually the game is about equal now. Ding missed his chances. He played too many moves with the queen. He should have gone for a different plan, to go just with the rook behind, as we mentioned, maybe go for a trade of bishop for a knight. Obviously, Gukesh didn't want to trade off queen, so she should have found simply a different plan. After queen to a2, now Gukesh can hold the position, because after rook to c2, he played queen to e6, queen to d8 check, and now we have really a beautiful tactical sequence that's going on now on the board. After queen to a5, it seems so that maybe Gukesh is losing now the game, because now suddenly he doesn't have any more two connected pass pawns, but now b3. After rook to c1, now comes queen to d5, queen to b4, now we have queen to g2, queen to e4, and now, but only now, Gukesh decides to trade off the queens, because here after queen takes e4 and d takes e4, look at this, Ding doesn't have any more to pass pawn. So that was something that bothered probably Gukesh in this endgame analysis. If White would still have this passer on the d file, this is not of course a pass pawn, because it still has to compete against the pawn on f6, but now Gukesh was probably satisfied with this position, because now we're running into a really beautiful drawish sequence. Gukesh played a powerful b2, rook to b1. He played now bishop to a2. Great move, just in order to create a fork. And now after king to c3, knight takes b2. In this particular position, both players agreed to a draw, which is, I think, a fair solution. Because after king to b2, we're reaching, of course, this endgame where we have opposite colored bishops. And okay, White has an extra pawn, but this is really a double pawn here on the e file, so this pawn cannot be pushed anyway. So we just control all of the light squares with our light square bishop. So it's really a nice thematic draw. So Gukesh found a beautiful now tactical sequence in the end to squeeze a draw out of this position. I would say a fair draw, because it was first of all a winning game for Gukesh, then it was a winning game for Ding. We see now many inaccuracies, I think, happen in this game. Gukesh has to now, I think, start to use his chances in, because he got many chances already in this match. Yesterday also, in the round 7, Gukesh had great chances. So now twice in a row he didn't convert his advantages into wins, which is, I think, somehow frustrating, I would say. Maybe in the next rounds he could think about this situation where he had maybe a much better position now twice in a row. Unfortunately for him, it didn't work out for him. But also Ding missed now also his chances later in the later stage of the game. So far I would say a fair draw, which is again making the result in the World Chess Championship equal. Both players have now 4 points, and now we're starting with the next rounds tomorrow, the round 9 of the epic FIDE World Chess Championship match in 2024. So, okay, I hope that you enjoyed my analysis here of this amazing game. If you want to see also some other games that we have covered from this match, check out our World Chess Championship match coverage. Here are some links of some games that we have analyzed before. And if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos. And what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.